Okay, guys, I am on my day 5. I'm quite impressed with myself that I've been on 5 days, 5th day today. And the reason I'm doing it, it's Mental Health Awareness Month in America. And here in the UK, we have it for about a week. I think it's from the 9th until anyway, a week. That's my point. What I've been doing is reading from this book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And I wanted to really get people to understand that in order to heal complex PTSD and childhood trauma, we need to get rid of the inner critic. And for most people that have not had childhood trauma, the inner critic is hard work. But the more mindful we become, the more we will heal, and we'll stop going into flashbacks. And flashbacks are fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, which is well explained in this book. And I want to mention that I bought this book on Amazon in December 2017. And prior to that, I was trying all sorts of remedies and modalities in order to heal. But I didn't know at the time that I had complex PTSD. And it's not something that one is diagnosed with as much, in that it's a response and behavior to events that happened in childhood. So the more I put this out there, even if one person catches this and understands it, then I'm doing my job. And that's my main thing. It's helping other people. So the other thing I would go on to say that I'm going to read 2 pages from this book, and then I'm going to show you the inner critic list to sort of really get in on that so people understand it. And I'll put the link below. And I think my whole of last year, I had a lot of stuff come up from this book. So I had a lot of stuff. I was grieving, I was healthy angering, and healthy blame. So that in society, we're told not to be angry and not to blame others. And that's quite damaging to people that have had complex PTSD issues or have complex PTSD issues. Hope I'm making sense. Right, so I'm going to read Embracing the Inner Critic. Pete Walker says, in my experience, until the fight response is substantially restored, the CPTSD client benefits little from CBT, psychodynamic or mindfulness techniques that encourage us to accept the critic. So in later recovery, when the survivor has removed the venomous stinger from the critic, these techniques can be quite valuable. So what he's saying here is that there are some techniques that people are pushed into or advised to by doctors. And I'll give you an example. About 5 years ago, or 2012, 2013, I was having huge anxiety after stopping drinking alcohol because I was using alcohol to self-medicate my childhood trauma because mine was very severe and frightening as a child. So as an adult, eventually I was using alcohol, drinking 1.5 bottles of wine a night. Now, the thing is with this is that when I stopped, I ended up going to the doctor thinking I was dying. There was something wrong with me. I was in a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. And the doctor at the time suggested CBT. And for me, I went and it didn't work. And this is what Pete Walker's saying, that there are some things that will not work until we've got to deal with our inner critic. So this is going to be good information for anybody who's got complex PTSD, and you will understand it deeper as you get the book and you read it. So I'm going to go on to read a little bit more. He says, then and only then are we able to reconnect with the helpful side of healthy criticism. And he says here, see Stone and Stone's book, Embracing Your Inner Critic. So he's suggesting a book. A typical indication that the critic has mellowed into being functional is that it speaks to us in a kind and helpful voice. It reminds us dispassionately to adjust our behavior when we can and ought to be doing something better. If, however, it blasts us for our imperfection, it is giving itself away as the toxic critic that was installed by our parents. So if you can imagine, if you had a child and you were shouting at them all the time and telling them they were horrible and they were ugly and there was something wrong with them, and you didn't embrace them or encourage them or love them, a child is going to end up having issues. And then that child, as a result of being abused and verbally, mentally, physically, sexually, they're going to grow up with issues, and they're going to talk to themselves. Their inner voice then becomes the inner voice that they heard as a child, because a child is a sponge. Clearly, they're learning to read, write, walk, all sorts of different things. And the sadness that comes from abuse means that, of being abused, means that we play it out through our adult life. And it's generally when we get to a later stage in life, we think, wow, we've got all of these problems, relational problems, problems with taking proper care of ourselves or loving ourselves, and it's a complete restart. So I'm going to continue reading. He says, a left-brained objective approach of embracing the critic is rarely helpful unless it is balanced with a subjective right-brained capacity for assertive self-protection. Perhaps this is because the inner critic appears to operate simultaneously with hyper-emotional right-brain flashback dynamics. Perhaps toxic inner critic processes are so emotionally overwhelming that efforts to resist them rationally and dispassionately are too weak to be effective. Okay, next page. And this page in the book is 183. So then he says, thought substitution and thought correction. Thought substitution, especially in the form of thought correction, is another essential tool for empowering the work of thought stopping the critic. Many years ago, I sensed that my critic became as tough as a bodybuilder's bicep through myriad repetitions. I guess that similarly, exercising self-protective responsive to the critic would build my thought correction muscles. And it did, in fact, and my instinct to protect myself almost always arises automatically now when I am triggered into a flashback. I believe I am not exaggerating when I say that tens of thousands of positive thought substitutions have rewarded me with a psyche that is fairly consistently user-friendly. I'm going to add there that the more that I dealt with my inner critic, I had what I thought were autoimmune issues. I had lots of different issues. And what I found was my physicality now is better than it's ever been in my life. Like my health and well-being is great. And I think the reason for that is the more I spoke to my inner critic, the less I stopped going into flashbacks. And then as a result of that, I wasn't stressing out my adrenals and my body, and the cortisol levels were being maintained. So there is something about, for instance, an example would be with your inner critic. If you don't understand what I mean, it's a voice in your head that tells you that you're crap, that you're ugly, that there's something wrong with you. And when you hear that voice, you've got to immediately tell it to bugger off or go away. And the quicker that you do it, you'll notice the more that you do it, it will become so natural that it no longer has any power over you. You might go into a split second of feeling sorry for yourself or that there's something wrong with you, but you'll snap yourself out of it. And it's retraining our thinking after, many, many years of being in an unpleasant situation. So he says, accordingly, I encourage you to immediately confront the critic's negative messages with positive ones, like those in the list at the beginning of the chapter. I haven't got that list in front of me, but I will find that and put that on a video tomorrow. He says, this is essential in CPTSD recovery because a single unconfronted toxic thought can act like a virus and rage infectiously out of control, like a flu-like melange of shame, fear, and helplessness. Moving quickly into thought stopping and thought correction often obliterates a headlong tumble into the downward spiral of a flashback. This is essential in critic work, and the critic typically attacks us more viciously once it has gotten up ahead of steam. At such times, the critic can hypercritically scorn us for falling back into self-criticism when we should know better. This is the time then, more than ever, to thought correct and not self-berate. As my last intern liked to say to her clients. So it's about we stop self-berating. And as I've said, people that have not had abuse berate themselves. So, we've got an extra job on when we've been through child abuse. He also continues, he says, additionally, I encourage you to write out a list of your positive qualities and accomplishments, to read it to yourself if you get lost in self-hate. He says here, Toolbox 5 in this chapter 16, Toolbox 5 in chapter 16 is a practical exercise to help you elaborate this list in a multi-dimensional way. Making a written record of your positive attributes is especially helpful, as flashbacks often create a temporary amnesia about your essential worthiness and goodness. Flashbacks seem to involve a temporary loss of access to more current left brain learning. MIRs show greatly reduced left brain activity in a hyper-aroused CPTSD survivors. In my experience, memorizing your list enhances your capacity to dissolve that amnesia. Reciting part or all of your list over and over like a mantra can also help you during your times when the critic is particularly severe and relentless. If you have trouble making the list or filling out Toolbox 5, ask a friend or a therapist for their input. Additionally, please let me remind you that qualities do not have to be perfect or ever present to qualify as qualities. If this is true of you, of the time, then it is a quality. Finally, positive visualization can become a powerful adjunct to thought substitution. Some survivors gradually learn to short-circuit the fear-mongering process of the critic by invoking images of past successes and accomplishments, as well as picturing safe places, loving friends, or comforting memories. There are also a variety of CDs available as places like Amazon.com that contain guided meditations that use positive language and imagery in a way that enhances deactivation and relaxation. So clearly we have work to do with complex PTSD. And that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I'm here. And if people want to work with me, then I do counsel and talk about complex PTSD. And I also teach people how to tap to bring them out of anxiety. That's tapping, faster EFT or EFT, which has worked very well for me. Like, it's rare that I get a panic attack now, but anytime I freak out, I just tap. That could be, it's just a moment, and then you bring yourself back into your body. So this book will help you. It will help you understand your flashbacks, and it will help you understand the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And once you understand what type you are, we tend to use all four as human beings. Fight, flight. Fight is when you attack by fighting back, or your flight, you get busy and you just disassociate. And then these things are really important to know. So the 14 tips, what I'm going to do, I've shown this on the video yesterday, but I think it's important that I share my screen and just give you an idea. Where am I? Here. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm not going to read them all because I've done this several times now. What I'm going to do is just show you what this is. What's going on here? Losing myself on this because I can't see what I want to see. There it is. Okay, right, okay. So you can see there, you've got one, these are a list of 14 common inner critic attacks divided into perfectionism and endangerment. I don't know if I can move this screen. I don't know if you can see that, but up to date, pausing. Okay. Anyway, each is paired with a healthy and typically more accurate substitution response. So let's see. We have, brilliant. These are the perfectionism attacks. So this is how we get rid of our inner critic. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And it's by Pete Walker. The book is by Pete Walker. And hopefully this is of use to somebody out there. If you have any questions or you want to follow what I'm doing with this, then hit the notification button and subscribe. And you can check out if you want to book a session with me to help you with this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to stop share. I'm back, and I think that it's really useful to have the book. So although I'm reading it, it's useful to have your own copy. And sometimes I've noticed that it's on Audible. You can get it for free. It's not free all of the time, but if you dip in and out of Audible, which is part of Amazon, then sometimes it shows up as being free, and then you can download it and have it free. I've got it on Audible on my phone, on my iPhone, and I've also got the hard copy. Okay, thanks for watching. Any questions, let me know. I'm going to end this meeting, and that's it for today.